We are talking to Captain Steve Farina, who is a firefighter, as well as the leader of BC Professional Firefighters Association mental health programs. And we can't wait to hear about what the firefighters are doing to assist really all first responders. And you've recently set up a fund, a resiliency fund. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so our executive director for our Burn Fund, which is the charitable arm of the BC Professional Firefighters Association, which I happen to be one of the vice presidents of. And you mentioned that the mental health task force, and that's part of my portfolio. And so we started a Resilience Without Barriers initiative, which you guys have so kindly donated to as well. And we're raising money to generate funds for counseling sessions for first responders that don't have the appropriate mental health extended health benefits, perhaps in their contract, or maybe they're a volunteer firefighter that don't have access to that. And so we have a fund that's being donated into that is going to provide free sessions for those folks right across British Columbia and right across the emergency first responder world. That includes healthcare nurses and frontline workers. So that's what that fund is set up for. And it taps into our network. We've created a network of over 400 mental health professionals that have spent some time with us. Matt Johnston, he's a Surrey firefighter and a mental health professional. And him and I have gone around BC and seen, as I mentioned, up to 400 clinicians and talking to them about firefighter culture, making them aware of the occupational hazards as well as some of the challenges, stoic work culture, those sort of things. So these clinicians, they are registered clinical counselors, or registered psychologists, social workers, HR folk, and we just spent some time educating them on the fire service. And so they're ready to take on clients and help us through not only the COVID crisis that we're dealing with right now, but just life crises and accumulative trauma stuff that, makes our backpacks very heavy in these careers.
Help us understand how that impacts those individuals mentally.
Yeah, we've signed up to do this job and we want to help our community. And so we've become accustomed to being first on scene, first to respond to emergencies, whether medical emergencies such as this one, or, hazardous materials spills, fires, motor vehicle accidents. We're always the ones that are responding first on scene. And through a career that can weigh on you. And, I say the calls that I have a daughter myself, she just turned 14. And when you go to calls involving children, they impact you immensely. Or you have an elderly parent and, you go to a cardiac. And so, there's some relatability there. And so that it can impact you. We kind of put our feelings aside when we do our job because, there is a job to be done. And sometimes we leave the feelings off and we don't address that. And that can weigh heavily on your soul over a 30-year career. Heck, even in the first 3 years, if you are bombarded by traumatic calls that you're attending, it can weigh very heavily on you. And it really depends on what you bring into this job as well. You could have a lot of life trauma, childhood stuff, just other challenges that you bring in. So you add the job trauma on top of that. And whether you're, having some marital difficulties or just, having kids is challenging. Everyone's homeschooling, so they all want to strangle their kids at home right now. So you have all of these layers, as you mentioned, and sometimes it can take you to your knees. And that's kind of the reason why we started this Resilience Without Barriers program, because we're so busy helping everybody else that we don't help ourselves. And I think that's what I really love about this initiative is that we're saying, hey, it's okay to take a knee. There's no shame in saying, I'm struggling. I need a little assistance. I need to offload some of the stuff that I've been carrying for so long. And that's what this initiative is going to do.
Have you noticed an increase now with this COVID-19 crisis around BC?
Here's the interesting thing. We're in the crisis right now. So people in our occupation, and I can speak of the fire service alone, but I would say it goes right across the paramedics and the police as well, is that we are in crisis mode. So we're on the front lines, we're doing the work, and there's not a lot of time right now to grieve loss or to worry about the impact, I think what you're going to find is more people are going to access help after the dust settles, if you will. And so when we find that we get a bit of a pause or break, or maybe there's some holidays or some time to think about what's going on, we're in it right now. So we're in survival mode. And I think once we bring our guard down after this settles, you're going to have people going, that was that was exhausting. And so you've got this hypervigilance happening right now. We're all, constantly washing our hands, worried about if we're going to take it home to our families. And there's no real time to worry and actually talk about it. So you're going to find probably in, a year from now, people are going to go, holy mackerel, that was really impactful on my timeline of my life. And now I need to process that. So we don't really have time right now to process it because we're in it.
Okay.
I think that goes for a lot of people. I actually just had a dinner with Matt, who's the one of the co-founders of First Responder Health, and he has one of our clinicians has 38 sessions booked already. So that 10,500 that we've initially raised, people are already booking sessions. Now we're not overwhelmed with people reaching out yet. As I mentioned, there's probably going to be a bit of a wait. So to build that kind of nest egg of donations for the tidal wave that's going to happen that's where I think we're going to need to prepare for what is to come. But people are accessing that right now. We've got a lot of people on the island that are volunteer firefighters and paramedics that are, utilizing that service so far from what I've been told.
And what's the URL again for the donations?
It is if you look up BC Burn Fund, you can actually donate right on that page. And I think there's a mental health checkbox that you can check to donate directly to this initiative.
Are you studying other countries of what they've learned? For instance, Italy, obviously they went through way worse a scenario than we have. But once it calmed down, it seems like a lot of the health workers really were so severely traumatized that many took their own lives, which is so tragic. So is that something you look to other countries and say, we really have to be prepared and have a lot of resources?
Yeah, they really were on the pointy end of that stick. And I think we've been a lot more prepared here, especially on the West Coast. I give it to Dr. Henry and the Premier, and they've done an amazing job of preparing us. And so we haven't had that impact just because of their proximity and then absolute unrelenting numbers that they've had. But we are keeping an eye on, in the States, there was a young paramedic out of New York that took his own life. And so we're definitely keeping our finger on the pulse and seeing what happens moving forward here. But I think we're in a pretty good position, I think, when it comes to support systems. And that's why I think this fund is so important. Myself here in Coquitlam, I have actually got some fairly good psychological benefits through my extended health. It's the ones that I'm worried about are the volunteer firefighters or the healthcare workers that don't have those funds. That's where this is going to really come in handy. So I can access support. I talk to my counselor regularly and offload, and it's really helped me through a lot of challenging times. And this will be one of those when it finally settles up.
Mm-hmm. That's so great. And all these volunteer firefighters and health responders, how did they learn about it? Is there a PR program to let them know?
Yeah, if you go to First Responder Health, that website is the firstresponderhealth.ca. That one actually shows the online, how you book an online counselor. But I want to say, oh God, I don't have it in front of me now. It would be the resilience@firstresponderhealth.ca. That's the email address that you would mail if you're interested in accessing that counseling. So we haven't really done a real wide public campaign yet. I think we're building up the donations, and we've reached out to our paramedic friends, the police. Some of the police actually have really good extended health benefits. So it'd be more like I just let my counterpart in the BC Volunteer Firefighter Association know that this is available to them. So we're starting to get the word out. We maybe need to do a better job of perhaps a public campaign. But that's why we're here.
That's right. Well, Steve, what would you say is any silver lining out of out of all this? I guess the fund is the biggest silver lining.
We have such a difficult time for asking for help and asking for money, and we're almost embarrassed to say, hey, could you, we're suffering, we would like some donations to help some of our fellow emergency responders. And I think that's why I'm so proud of being a BC professional firefighter, is that our mission, I guess, is to help bring everybody up and to support everybody in our first responder world. And that includes the nurses and paramedics and police and the volunteer firefighter association. So we feel we have an obligation to support everybody. We're all in this together. And I think, the silver lining is that we're realizing what's important, and we're getting back to, practicing some, being grateful that we're living in Canada, not the US.
Mm-hmm.
For one, spending time with family. I hear a lot of people say, we're spending a lot of time with family, and that can be challenging at times, but my God, reconnecting with family, spending that quality time, realizing that we live in a pretty awesome country, and I don't know, it gives us perspective, right? It just slows everything down. This whole thing has slowed everything down. Realize that, you don't have to travel like crazy. You don't have to spend like crazy. My entertainment budget alone has been hacked down by 2/3. So I can't believe how much I drank before all this, but I've really got back into nature. And, I see so many people hiking, biking, kayaking into nature. People are baking. Hell, I just baked some sourdough bread with my sister-in-law the other day. So, we're exploring all kinds of stuff, and we're getting creative, and I love that. So there's the silver lining, right? We're kind of getting back to the roots and being good human beings, most of us. Yeah, I'm a hugger, so I hug everybody, and so I'm really thinking about that. I'm major at risk if I hug the amount of people that I normally do. Am I going to be wearing a suit? I don't know.
Have you had many calls for COVID?
Yeah, they've definitely
COVID/respiratory related issues, and if so, what's it been like?
Yeah, we have in the initial phase of the pandemic, we've definitely have gone to calls where they involve cardiac arrest, respiratory distress, even potential, like a diabetic that was having low blood sugar, and there was a potential for him to have COVID because of the way they were traveling. So we've gone to enough of those calls here. I mean, the BC firefighters have definitely responded to that, along with the paramedics. And as I was saying to Ruthie, that it definitely changes the dynamic of the crew. Like they become hyper vigilant. We're suiting up to go to those calls. You're worried about your family getting it, your coworkers getting it. So it definitely adds another layer to stress. And I was saying there's actually relief when we have to go to a fire or a motor vehicle accident. There's actually, oh, thank God I don't have to go to medical emergency where there's potential COVID exposure, right? And so the guys are there, you can just visibly see them like, oh, yeah, I can be a firefighter now and go do that. But it definitely adds another layer to the emergency response when they hear that word, respiratory distress, COVID, flu-like symptoms, it amps it up.